song on the drums that I recognized.
Yeah.
And that was it. You know, you can take off and play things. But I stole that from the drums. I started playing it. You know?
Yeah.
Almost every part of the drum has a different sound.
Yeah.
Good. And you got the method, and you got the actual head sound. So it gives you like almost 3 different orchestras that you can use, or 3 different orchestrations you can use, you know. And then you've got all this other stuff that brings, and you can even alter the vibrations. You know, you can. Oh, you also have different kinds of instruments like brushes. You play behind the singer that has a soft voice. They just a soft. And some guys are really, Max Roach was a virtuoso with these things. You know, he could play a whole solo that nobody would think of just with the brushes. You know, so that kind of inspired me to do all kinds of stuff. And you have, in case you want to play Latin, what was that Max used to play?
St. Thomas.
St. Thomas, that's what it was. Because he did that with...
Yeah, Sonny Rollins too.
Sonny Rollins, yeah. Yeah, so that, you know, when you hear things like that, it inspires you to not just have to...
So you mentioned Max Roach numerous times. Okay. And you've mentioned Max Roach numerous times in our previous conversation. How important is Max Roach?
He is, in my life, the most important. And he had, he copied after Papa Joe Jones, Jonathan Joe Jones, who was, I forget where he came from, but he was like the king. He was playing with Count Basie's big band and everything when Max Roach was a kid, you know. And Max had told me so many stories about growing up and these people that idolized him, and then he looks back and they're all of us that are idolizing Max themselves, you know.
Yeah.
But then it forces you or encourages you to go back to those older people and see what Cindy Capman and Joe Jones and Sonny Payne was with Basie, but Sonny Greer. And Sonny Greer, that's what inspired me to do this, because Sonny Greer had timpani with his drum set, and he had a gong back in the back, so he had a little gong with his gong, you know, and stuff like that. And so that was my encouragement to go this way.
Yeah. Now, what was it about these musicians and the way they played that inspired you the most?
Oh, they were always getting the most attention. You know, everybody loved the drummers, you know, and then you'd see them do certain, you know, a guy. And Sonny Payne, before you hit the big climax, he'd say,
yeah.
and everybody be waiting for him to do that. When he hit that lick, everybody would just jump, you know.
Yeah.
But certain little things that the people added into their act, so to speak. And you'd wait the whole evening to see them get to that point, and it was always worth it.
Yeah. But from a technical side, what was it about Max Roach that put him head and shoulders above pretty much almost everyone else? What was it about him technically in the way he played?
There were two things. One was his technical facility, because just to be able to play like a snare drum roll, everybody doesn't know how to do that, and everybody doesn't have to refine it, because there's a double stroke roll, and then there's a single stroke roll where you can do that on the drums with bigger heads and timpani. That's the way you play them. You don't do that kind of stuff. But all of these are rudiments that we learn when we first start playing the drum. And then you learn how to make your feet be as fast as your hands and things like that. That didn't happen right away. Even Max wasn't, like the first person I saw that really scared me was, he was a little 14-year-old kid named Tony Williams.
Tony Williams. Yeah.
And I thought I was hot shit. I'm far away shows. And I went to see somebody that wasn't there, Alan Dawson, and said, "Oh, we got this little 14-year-old guy." I started going. I said, "No, I sat down and watched this kid. He scared me so bad. It took me 3 years practicing before I could feel that I was approaching that level."
Yeah. Now, what was it about his playing? I mean, he came along like with Miles in that early '60s period. Yeah. Now, how did his entry into the music, how did that sort of change things and open people's minds about some of the other drumming possibilities?
Oh man, it was like he had just a superb technique. He could play, he could play a bass drum with 1 foot, and he could do the same thing. I can't do it, but his feet were just as articulate as his hands in terms of communicating what he wanted to do. Tony Williams decided to enlarge his group when he left Miles.
Yeah.
So instead of having just bass piano and drums, he hired 2 other drummers and a guitar player along with the bass and the piano. So we had like a drum trio inside of his group.
Right.
And there were times when the 3 of us would just play by ourselves. Don Lash was playing congas and bongos and timbales, and I'm playing the timpani and the gongs and a marimba, because Tony had a marimba. And then Tony's playing the drum set, and he was playing more shit on the drum set than we were playing on all these other instruments. But what was so great about it was you sit up there and watch him do this stuff night after night on a tour, and you realize that it's not impossible to do it. If you work on it, and there were some things that he could do that I would never be able to do. Just like some things I see Max do that I wouldn't be able to do, or Art Blakey. But on the other hand, when you see the possibility of certain things, it pushes you into another direction also. So it enhanced my ability to play drums just watching these guys go, I didn't know that was possible. Well, okay, we do it like this, and you see them do it night after night after night, and then you realize that it's a matter of doing it rather than the possibility of it.
Yeah. So what are some of the techniques and styles that separate the different great drummers? What are their individual characteristics that make them unique?
I'll copy this. Max Roach did this. And he did it so frequently in a style that I saw him at a concert get up on the stage and look at the audience, and he said, boom, 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 and he looked at the audience like this, and the audience said, together, but see, Max had created that whole fandom that everybody knew his style and knew certain things that he was doing. So they would almost compliment his music with his own phrases.
Yeah, yeah. Now, give me, for instance, what would be like a signature thing, let's say like with Philly Joe Jones?
Oh man, Philly Joe had a thing everybody else would just play on the snare drum and the drum, and the bass drum would be there. But he would make the bass drum part of the melody. And that facility, and Philly Joe Jones, well, all of them had a different way of playing just. Philly Joe had a thing where his wrist looked like a pendulum.
Yeah.
I would be in a band that had like timpani, and the timpani would always sit next to the drums. So I could watch all these guys, and Philly Joe Jones's stick had a thing that went like this, the way he held it, I couldn't actually do it, but each one of them, somebody had a thing where, I think Blakey had a thing where his fingers went out with the stick. And being in that kind of proximity where I could watch the drummers so closely, if I looked just at their hands, I could tell which drummer it was.
Yeah,
In addition to the sound,
exactly.
It produced a different sound.
Yeah, so there's this saying that goes, jazz pays off when Stan Getz, Buddy Rich. And I want you to talk about Buddy Rich.
Buddy Rich was great and fantastic, and he was like a physical freak.
Yeah.
Because he had such control with his foot that he could play the bass drum faster than anybody had ever played the bass drum before. But all that did was make everybody else get faster.
Yeah.
So now you see a bunch of guys that they can do that, but Buddy Rich was just phenomenally gifted physically.
Right.
With the speed and everything. Now his style, I thought he played too loud, generally speaking, except when he played with his own band.
Right.
Then he became an accomplice, but when he was in somebody else's band or being a star, he was always like a little louder than you wanted him to be and everything. But you just had to admire his technique.
Right.
It was so.
Yeah. What made Art Blakey such a great band leader?
He had a way of conducting with the drums, with the drum set, and Blakey developed what we call this, it's just a long roll. But you hear him, the band being down, and then you hear. But Blakey, he wasn't working as hard as I did because he had his arms out in a certain way that it was just, I don't know, it was so well coordinated that it didn't look hard for him.
Yeah.
But if anybody else tried to do it, I remember one time Kenny Clark, who was older than Blakey, because of racial prejudice, Kenny Clark went over on a tour to Europe and liked the way he was treated, so that she moved to Europe.
Yeah.
And just stayed over there.
Yeah.
And Max Roach brought us over there, Boom, the group of our drummers. And I sat at a table watching Max in between Art Blakey and Kenny Clark, both of whom were older than Max. And they were slapping up beside his head, "Oh, you were ridiculous when you were a kid." He's, and he's kind of laughing it off. But it was really, all three of them were beyond my biggest expectations of myself being a drummer. But you could see that there was a definite recognition of Kenny Clark's more experienced career. And Blakey's was next, and Max was the third. And while Max was God to us, it was like very interesting to see how these two other guys were just batting him around like a ping pong ball.
Yeah. Now you mentioned Kenny Clark,
Yes.
and he's an important figure because in the cipher that was Mitten's Playhouse, he was the house drummer there.
Yes.
And I want you to talk about that experience and how how your loft experience, who brought all of these great musicians to your space. Talk a little bit about the space that was Mitten's Playhouse and Kenny Clark's contribution to it.
Well, see, now, what would happen was after we finished playing our little afternoon and early evening gigs, there would be some place where everybody would collect. I mean, some places were more notorious for drugs being around, and I mean, of course, everybody was drinking and whatnot, So there would be places where we would group and socialize, but that was the time when you could ask some of these other drummers about stuff, or if they were playing the last set, then all the rest of the drummers would be there to study what they were doing.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm not sure. In fact, I think what really damaged that whole concept and approach to learning was the availability of television, which wasn't there at that time.
Right.
And now people are so accessible without leaving their house, without leaving your house. Okay, I want to see what so-and-so does, and it's all there. But it's not the same as being there in person and feeling the actual vibrations of the music. Television doesn't give you that.
Right. But I'm glad that you mentioned that because I just feel so fortunate to be here with you and you telling all these great stories and you're demonstrating a lot of that stuff on drums. And I just want to say thanks so much, Warren, for inviting me to your studio so I can capture some of this because I think this is important to our society, it's important to our culture, it's important to our art. And I just want to say, before we continue, I just want to say thank you so very much, Professor Warren, for allowing me into your space.
Oh man, listen, you're always welcome, and what we want to do is keep it alive. And the only way I found out is by talking to Art Blakey and Kenny Clark and Max Roach and so many others that were older than me and copying and stealing every idea I could from them. But it's not a stealing, because it's...
I understand, it's creativity.
And we're trying to make it available for the young people that come behind us to have that option. It's going to be different. They're going to change. They're going to hear some different stuff,
Right.
But that's very important to me.